Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board the Bernier bus train. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernier Bus Show. I have to say, before we get started, I have to say thank you to our veterans on Veterans Day. Even though I'm anti-imperialist, I am thankful for the people I know. Here's a shout out to my grandpa, Alan Wood, who was a veteran in World War II, and to all the others who have served. Now, let's leap on to some celebrity endorsements for Bernie. Newly freed Lula endorses Bernie for president. This is really epic, even though nobody knows about it.
I would like to thank you all for your solidarity from the bottom of my heart and tell you that I am free to help liberate Brazil from the insanity that is happening in our country, he said. We need to take care of education.
We do.
Employment, salaries, culture, and happiness. Young people don't live if they don't feel pleasure and motivation for life, and this is what we have to offer you.
This guy sounds like a great person. Brazil is in a struggle similar to ours. The working people are in a struggle similar to ours. And what this guy has to say, as well as Jeremy Corbyn, it's important for on the world stage and on our own stage here at home.
So, he's leaving prison ready, just like any strong leader, to fight for the people. Leaving prison, not thinking about himself, but thinking about everybody else around him. Now, in case you don't know, this story is deep. It would take me an entire video just to cover exactly what happened in this case. But essentially, Lula was thrown in prison on trumped-up corruption charges, designed essentially to silence him during the last election that he was poised to win if he was allowed to run.
Sounds kind of like Julian Assange.
That eventually was won by far-right leader Jair Bolsonaro. Now, the reason why this happened is because Lula is incredibly popular. So in 2010, when he left office, he left with an 83% approval rating.
Yeah.
Now, globally, this is unheard of, but there's good reason why he was so popular. During his time in office, some 30 million people moved out of poverty. While the country's business leaders feared his leftist rhetoric before he was elected, he soon won their enthusiastic support, extending low-cost government credit and liberalizing banking. He presided over a flourishing economy as Brazil grew on surging commodity prices. He implemented a series of redistributive policies, including significant hikes in minimum wage, a conditional cash grant to the poor, and his government brought in a controversial affirmative action program for public universities that for the first time enrolled significant numbers of black and mixed-race Brazilians.
Wow.
So, he was an incredible leader and just a wonderful man overall. And now, luckily, Brazil has him back to potentially run again in the future. Now, if you have someone like this, who on a global scale is known for his incredible achievements as leader of Brazil and his dedication to the people, you have someone like this support a candidate for president in the U.S., you should pay attention. So before I get to that endorsement, let me first show you what Bernie Sanders tweeted out when Lula was released. As president, Lula has done more than anyone to lower poverty in Brazil and to stand up for workers. I am delighted that he has been released from jail, something that should never have happened in the first place. Now, as far as I've seen, Bernie's the only 2020 candidate to even acknowledge Lula's existence, let alone understand the importance of his release. So following this tweet, Lula replied to Bernie with this: "Thank you for your solidarity. You have always been my candidate for the U.S. presidency, and I hope Democrats have the wisdom to nominate a candidate with your worldview. I hope American workers will make you U.S. president."
I hope American workers will make you U.S. president. American workers need a little boost from us, though, because unless Bernie gets on the ballot in the general election, American workers, who many of whom are traditionally conservative, won't even vote for Bernie because he won't if it happens like last time, he won't get the nomination from the Democratic Party. It looks like the DNC is all set to rig it again, and a lot of American workers who would otherwise vote for Bernie in the general election won't get a chance to. Now, let's look at some other celebrity endorsements. Here are some for Elizabeth Warren. Some of these, most of these, were Hillary supporters last time. John Legend, Chrissy Teigen, Jonathan Van Ness, Scarlett Johansson, Roxane Gay, Rosie O'Donnell. CNN reports that Warren's second quarter saw donations from Ryan Reynolds, Amy Schumer, Bette Midler, Shonda Rhimes, and Jane Fonda, who also donated to Amy Klobuchar before she dropped out. Steve Bullock and Jay Inslee before they dropped out. Meanwhile, Sarah Jessica Parker was spotted at Warren's recent Washington Square Park rally. So this is the reason to show you this is the DNC machine is alive and well, and their minions are after Elizabeth. Now, you think that may be too strong of wording, but you may have not read the information I have, the wiki information about talent agencies in Hollywood. Now, yes, 2 days ago, we talked about Seth MacFarlane and Mark Ruffalo, and it's clear if you watch that video that there is pressure on them not to endorse Bernie. Here are people. Susan Sarandon is not in that category. She has the guts to not only endorse Bernie, but to poke fun at Elizabeth Warren for being a Republican until she was 47 years old. Other brave people: Cardi B, Emily Ratajkowski, Shailene Woodley, Rob Delaney, Jason Mraz, John Cusack, Danny DeVito, Justin Long, Danny Glover, Chloe Sevigny, Brandi Carlile. Several celebrities have shared support for Sanders. United Kingdom's Guardian, Chloe Sevigny said, "Sanders is punk as fuck, plain and simple." Meanwhile, Brandi Carlile showed her passion by hosting a May rally for the senator in Vermont. And who could forget Cardi B's anointing of the candidate as Daddy Bernie? Other donors feeling the burn included John Mulaney, Adam McKay, and Norah Jones. Specifically, or conspicuously absent from that list, is Spike Lee, who was on the train last time. He made a beautiful video for Bernie last time. This time, he endorsed Kamala Harris. Very sad. Now, Elizabeth Warren's chauvinistic approach, we talked about that yesterday, and it was on the Rising's week-long synopsis. And I wanted to go back again. I played the first part of this video about a week ago or so, and I want to go back to it again because I didn't get to this part of it. Zed Jilani is talking about Warren's chauvinistic approach.
Is behaving in a chauvinistic manner that appeals to a lot of upper-class liberals that look down, I think, on social conservatives, but that could end up alienating key voter blocks in a lot of these more...
A key example of that is when Hillary called Trump supporters a basket of deplorables. Elizabeth hasn't done that yet, but he's saying that there is a similarity in there in the way they look at working class Americans.
More socially conservative states in a way that I think even the economic populist policies are not doing.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, taking this back to the Medicare for All debate, if you look at the polls, Bernie Sanders, who says openly taxes will go up on middle class, but overall you'll pay less, he is much more trusted on health care than she is, even though she's gone through this elaborate ritual of making sure she doesn't say those words.
Well, here's the other thing. Medicare for All definitely alienates the medical industry, doctors, pharma, insurance. They'll all fight it. But most corporations will stay on the sidelines because it doesn't really necessarily hurt them. She also wants to boost the corporate tax rate back up to 35% and enforce it much tougher. She's basically bringing in tons more people into the fight. So if you really just look at the politics of their plans, hers is actually much less likely to get passed as a matter of financing.
Right. I think she knows that. I think she's doing that on purpose. I think she likes wagging her finger at people because then there are certain things that she'll say she wants to get done that won't actually get done, and she knows it won't actually get done. Her daughter is part of the industry. Her daughter certainly doesn't want her mother to get this done. So Elizabeth, and also she's tied it to immigration. She's tied the funding to immigration and there was another thing too. And so she's making things in advance almost impossible to get done. And that's what incrementalists say. Oh, we don't have the political capital right now to get this done, but we're working on it. And a little bit of what Mark Ruffalo was saying yesterday about the Democrats. He's on the blue team. He likes the Democratic brand because they're in favor of good things. But they're controlled opposition. They don't have any intention of getting those things done. They know they won't. They know that they have enough, as controlled opposition, they know they have enough power on the other side of the aisle to keep them in check. They want to be kept in check by the Republicans. They don't want to get these things done because then the gravy train will go off the tracks. Their sponsors, their corporate sponsors, will abandon them. There's this winking and nodding that's happening, and everybody knows it. And that's what incrementalism is all about. And you can already see that the pivot is coming, and you can already see that she knows, and she's rigging it in advance against herself, not to get the support she needs to get Medicare for all to become a reality. Also, the main other thing is that she isn't mobilizing labor. She's not mobilizing the workforce, because without mobilized labor, then you're going to have no power to make the kind of changes that would be necessary, the kind of populist power that would be necessary to get Medicare for all to become a reality.
Because you're enlisting basically the entire business, every business out there, to fight against it, whereas Bernie's basically just focusing on the medical industry while saying, hey, the average person will pay a little bit more in taxes, but we'll phase it in progressively so that the poor won't pay very much more. But if you earn six figures, you have a Lexus, you can pay a little bit more in payroll taxes. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a winning argument for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you pointed this out too, which is...
It's a losing argument for the people who own those Lexus cars. People see Elizabeth as an ally because they're savvy. The voting class is savvy. The people who don't usually vote don't have this all figured out. They don't understand the posturing behind over on the sidelines. They don't understand what's going on that will make it impossible to actually get this done if they elect Elizabeth Warren.
That the impact of these taxes is not lost. You tweeted about specifically how she wants to repeal the medical device tax because, of course, medical device companies are all headquartered.
Bring home the bacon, because the medical device companies are in her home state.
In Massachusetts. So she understands fundamentally the impact, and it goes much more to the point that a lot of this is for perceived electoral benefit, and yet it may not even be helping her.
And, the plan that she's described, I think it is largely political. It is largely just saying, you won't pay anything more, these really rich guys will, but we know that...
You won't pay a penny more, she said, to the middle class, which is absolutely false. It's an indirect and regressive, meaning flat tax on middle-income workers, because the tax is levied of their employers.
No country finances healthcare that way. We know it's not realistic or pragmatic to do that, whereas Bernie is basically doing it the same way the Canadians do it, or Australians, or British, or Germans, or Italians.
I think it's very interesting, though, your point about electability, which I tried to make a version of yesterday, actually, which is basically there are two types of left, right? There's like the cultural signaling leading with the identity issues type of left, which, look, I'm there on all those issues, right? But...
That's what some of these celebrities are. They're signaling. They're signaling that they're on the left.
electorally, it is a more challenging pitch. It's not where swing voters typically are. Whereas the economic populist left, Medicare for all, even Green New Deal is fairly popular, guaranteed jobs program, these sorts of things are much more saleable. What's interesting, though, is Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are basically on the same place in all those issues, but it's a matter of how they frame their argument and how they signal on those issues more so than even where they specifically stand.
And the way Elizabeth Warren signals will leave her on the outside looking in when it comes to the more socially conservative swing voters. And that's what they've had a number of guests on their show to make that point. And they make it powerfully and they support it well. And the data of Thomas Piketty also make that case well, that poor and poorly educated people, not to mention young people, are not going to vote for Elizabeth. So if you decide, if you're a celebrity or a regular suburbanite, and you decide that Elizabeth Warren is your gal, what you're going to find is that there's no way in hell that she can beat Donald Trump in a general election. And that we've already run that thought experiment. We've already seen what happens when you throw a corporatist against a populist, and that's going to happen again, even worse this time. There are more Bernie Sanders supporters this time who absolutely are not going to be sheepdogged into the Democratic fold, way more, I would predict, based on polling that I've looked at. But it's hard to ferret those numbers out about those who will definitely not support a corporatist in the general election. Emerson Polling was onto it for a while. Back in April, they were talking about that, but they have not since then. And when we make inquiries to make sure those numbers are right, for example, it said in April that 26% of Sanders supporters would rather vote for Donald Trump than for Elizabeth Warren, and they won't return our calls. Actually, one of us called and was hung up on when we were trying to talk about that. So they don't want to talk about that. They don't want anyone to be quoting them. So I'm guessing that number is a conservative number. There are lots and lots of Sanders supporters who absolutely, well, they're populists, and a lot of them are in swing states. And Elizabeth is just simply not going to get those votes. So we need to wake up to that fact, and we need to get on the Bernie train. We need to unite behind Bernie now. There isn't any other possibility. Let's just make it clear. We've got a few more months to talk about it. It's just not going to happen. So get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Hope to talk to you tomorrow. Keep on burning. Happy Veterans Day. Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no